Hi, I'm Carrie O'Toole, and this is my daughter, Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hello.
This workshop is called What About the Siblings? I work as a coach with adoptive families who are really struggling with their kids and having to make a decision about whether they can stay in the home, whether they can all recover from the trauma that's happened in the child and then also in the family. And we are one of those families. And so I've had many times where there are kids or teens involved, and Katie has actually helped me, joined me on a few of the coaching calls. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
And from that experience, we've put out a few podcasts talking about the healthfully attached siblings of kids that come into a family with severe levels of trauma or attachment issues. So when I was submitting my proposal for Replanted to do another workshop, we thought about, what about doing one about the siblings? What about the siblings? So here we are. So thanks, Katie, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I thought, first of all, we would talk about your experiences as well as the experiences of some of the other kids and teens that you've talked to. Then we'll go into what could parents do to help the communication with their healthily attached kids. Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk a little bit about how do we heal up some of the damage that's been done due to this chaos and trauma in the home. So would you go ahead and be willing to start with, thank you for starting my timer. She's always the one who helps me out. She bails me out of all my problems. So Katie, would you go ahead and share a little bit about your experience in our family?
Sure. Well, when I was 7 years old, we went to Vietnam to adopt our youngest brother, my little brother. And from then, we had him in our family. And it was great at first. Like, it was really fun being a middle child instead of the youngest child. I really got along with him at first, and we had a lot of fun together. We would play. We would chase each other around. It was great. But we started noticing that there were just some things that were kind of off, and it started getting harder to play with him, and he started having some behaviors that were not very pleasant and not very easy to understand being a young girl that I was. One of those was he was very manipulative in his behaviors, especially towards me and my parents. I would often get in trouble for things that he would do because he was a very good manipulator of conversations and emotions. He was able to blame me for things that he did. I remember one time he spilled a bowl of spaghetti onto our nice, like, cream-colored carpet. So, that wasn't going to come out very easily. And I was cleaning it up because Mom and Dad were upstairs, and I believe this was in the basement. And Mom comes down, and she goes, "What happened here?" And I was like, "Oh, he spilled the spaghetti on the floor." And he goes, No, Katie did that. That wasn't me." And he was just able to spin the conversation around enough so that it seemed like it was me that spilled the spaghetti, and I was cleaning it up because it was my fault, rather than I was cleaning it up because I was the older sibling and I was helping him. Just little things like that would happen pretty frequently.
Yeah, and that's the thing. These are little things.
Yeah.
And so somebody might go,
No big deal. Yeah, that happens all the time.
What siblings do, that's kind of a thing. But it's the consistency of them, mm-hmm. It's the frequency of them, and sometimes the intensity. And there was kind of a little underhanded something that you could always tell was going on. And like, as a mom, it's really hard. You want to believe your kids, both
right.
kids. You want to believe both kids. And he could be very, very convincing.
Yeah, he was a very smooth talker, mm-hmm. Especially for somebody whose English was their second language. Like, he was very good at using English. But like, as the years went on, like, little behaviors like that became more frequent, and they became more damaging too. Like, as we were getting older, we ended up sharing a Jack and Jill bathroom, and I would wake up oftentimes middle of the night, and he would be like stroking my face, moving my hair out of my face, and it would like freak me out. And then as soon as I woke up, he would run back to his room and pretend like nothing had ever happened. And that behavior happened often enough that I went to my parents begging for a lock on my door because it was freaking me out. And I ended up having some really bad sleep issues for years after that, because like it was just scary to wake up and have somebody staring at you and touching you, especially when you were not expecting them to be there. Like that was one of the most difficult behaviors that I personally witnessed with him.
Well, and I remember we moved two times before that, trying to find a situation that would work for all of our kids. The first time we moved, your brothers both shared the bathroom. And that was horrific.
Yeah.
Because they
didn't get along.
They did not get along. And so we literally moved our home trying to have another situation. And by the way, we were getting therapy through all of this.
Yes.
This was not like, well, let's just move and that'll work. No, we had an attachment therapist we had been working with from before we even went to Vietnam, who was helping our family. And you remember he even came into our house a couple of times on different Saturdays, and he worked with us for like 8 hours on a Saturday, trying to watch the behavior and help us figure out how to best deal with this. And, so here we are on our third house now. And so now you and he are sharing the bathroom, and this is going on. We again put the house on the market and moved to another house where we had 3 kids. We had 3 floors where each child would have their own room and bathroom, so that we wouldn't have these issues. Thinking, okay, maybe this will do it. And of course it did not.
Right.
We ended up having to place our son after 8 years. We had to place him in another home, which was also traumatic for you having to go through.
Yeah, it was really confusing, because it was at the same time like super relieving to not have to worry about my physical and mental health and safety anymore. But also it was horrible because I still loved my brother and I missed him. And, there were a lot of really hard, really horrible things that were going on in our family. But at the same time, we were still able to have fun with each other on occasion. It just didn't happen very frequently. But once we finally made that decision, it's like I was so relieved and mad at the same time that I just couldn't understand what to do or how to feel, because I had such conflicting emotions. And it was really hard at school. I was in high school when we finally made this decision, and like none of my friends understood. I lost half of them, and the other half kind of just ignored it and pretended like I never had a younger brother.
Well, and they didn't understand while it was happening.
Right.
In fact, that was it wasn't like the main thing, but it was one of the considerations that Dad and I used, was looking at, we had always thought we would be the family where all the kids came over, and our last house actually had a very nice basement with a pool table and all of this. And nobody ever wanted to come to our house.
No.
Your friends didn't want to come. The neighbors didn't want to come.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about your friend across the street.
Yeah. So in our last house that we had my younger brother with us, I had one of my best friends across the street. And I would go over to her house all the time in order to, get away and just forget about all the problems at home. And she was great. She was so kind and understanding. Her parents were awesome. They were always like, come over anytime, literally. So like I would get home from school and I would go over there like almost every single day. And then when we even decided to homeschool, it's like I would finish my school and I would go over there as soon as she got home from school. And it was just a very relieving place. And that was the only friend that saw the behavior of my younger brother, because he was so good at putting on this like amazing like cookie cutter picture of himself where it's like he just looked amazing to everybody
He was
else.
very charming.
Very charming, yeah. We'd walk down the street and like 5 kids would go, "Hey, how are you doing? How nice to see you." And I'm just like, "You know them?" And he's like, "Yeah."
He had more friends than everybody.
Yeah, he had more friends than literally anybody I knew. And so everybody was like, "Well, why would you ever consider giving him up, because he's so awesome?" And I'm like, "You don't know, because he doesn't show that side of himself outside of the house." So this friend across the street was the only person who got to see that side. Mm-hmm. And so she was like super supportive because she understood.
Right. Having helped me coach some of these other kids, what would you say are some common themes that like everybody seems to notice?
One definite thing is that a lot of the siblings, actually basically everyone I've talked to, feels like they don't have enough time or relationship with their parents. Specifically because a lot of the time and attention is devoted to the child that is having the issues. So, you know, the old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, is very true. Mm-hmm. And so if the other siblings aren't the ones causing the issues, aren't the ones having problems, then they tend to get ignored.
Well, and many times if you did have a problem, you didn't want to bring it to us because and this is with many of the kids that I work with, they feel like their parents already have so much.
They're already overwhelmed.
And also I think many of the kids, even though this is not a logical thought, this is just how kids' brains work, is that if I bring anything up, I could destroy my family. Yeah. Like I could take them down if I start having problems.
Right. The other saying is that, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back, it's like, you don't want to be that straw. And, you know, you hear your parents talk about how much they're just overwhelmed, struggling, they don't know what to do. And
mom's crying
again, and dad left the house again to get away. You know, it's like your little problem doesn't seem to be important enough to bring up. So then you shove it down and you forget about it, you move on, and then it starts piling up and piling up. Mm-hmm. And then eventually something happens. Typically the kid explodes. Mm-hmm. And then it's like all these little things start coming out all at once, and then that really does overwhelm the parents.
Right. Well, because I remember you had not shared that your brother was coming in your room. Mm-hmm. You didn't share that for a long time.
Right.
And then even after he left and you were struggling with some depression and some thoughts, you didn't share those with us right away. It was months and sometimes years later that you finally came out and said, here's what really happened. Right. Here's what I was really going through. And it's heartbreaking as a mom to know that your baby is hurting so badly and you didn't even know. Right. You can't do anything. But it's understandable because she didn't feel safe enough to come talk to us.
Well, because over those years, I had learned that, like, if I came with a problem, it sometimes was listened to, but it sometimes and most of the time felt like it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I felt very unheard. I felt like I was less important than my brother. And I felt like I was just kind of there to be the keeper of the peace. Mm-hmm. And if I caused any problems, then, you know, like my mom said, I was causing the family to fall apart. So I was trying my hardest to keep the family together and keep myself going. And it didn't end up working out.
And so, you know, I want to speak to parents here just for a minute. It's hard to hear this stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard to know your children are suffering so much. And truly, I'm not sure how I could have done it differently, but I certainly would have tried had I known she was suffering as much as she was. Mm-hmm. And when we found out, we did get counseling. I mean, there were a couple of years there where we remember we were spending more on therapy than we were spending on our mortgage because the kids had counseling, we had marriage counseling, I had individual counseling, our son had, it was like, how many counselors can you see in the week? That was our schedule on Sunday night, was what therapy do we have this week and who needs to go where?
I've got 3 appointments this week. Got to go with you to 2. You know.
Yeah, so it was crazy. So it's tough. I want you to know I hear you parents and I know how hard it is. And also, these other children are suffering. Mm-hmm. And so we have to do something to help. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about that for a minute. What could we have done? What can you say to these parents that they could do to help with this?
Well, the first thing is, I would say what would have really helped is if every week, like, set aside a time to just talk to each other and say, what's going on? How are you doing? Is there anything that you need to share with me? And be able to really listen to them without getting defensive, without getting upset, without getting overwhelmed. And, you know, that might be kind of hard. And maybe some weeks you're just unable to do it, but try to do it as frequently as you can just to keep in touch with the other kids, because, you know, eventually they're just going to learn that you're not somebody safe enough to talk to.
Right. And one way we did that was with your band.
Yeah.
Do you want to share about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm actually a professional musician, and growing up I would go to a weekly band program and Mom would drive me. And on our way there, even after I got my driver's license, Mom insisted on taking me. I think 1, to get us both out of the house, and 2, it was a really good time for us to connect. And we would go to dinner, and then we'd go to band, and then sometimes afterwards we'd grab some ice cream, because what good outing is complete without ice cream?
And then when you got your license, many times you would drive, and
Right.
I would go with you.
Right.
But, you know, lots of the parents would drop their kids off, and then they'd sit and read a book, or they'd leave the building or whatever. And I was trained in music as well, and so that was a big connection with us. And so I would sit and listen to the rehearsals. So afterwards, you could say, "Did you hear that?"
Yeah.
Yes, I did. That was so amazing. You know, I could
Right.
hear as you progressed, and
Right.
that was really fun.
Yeah, so we had a good connection with that activity in common, but also during the dinners. I remember sometimes I would look forward to going out to dinner with her more than I would look forward to going to band.
Yeah.
Because that was where I was able to say, oh my gosh, today was so hard. Or this weekend really stunk. Like, this was not fun. I didn't enjoy this.
Right.
And I didn't feel comfortable sharing everything, because, again, I was still feeling hurt from the years of just not being listened to, not being able to speak. But that was where I started opening back up, even before my brother left. So that was like the good starting point for us. And, you know, if we had started that earlier.
Yeah, I can't remember how old you were when we started that, but it was a great experience.
I think it was like 11.
11,
But
yeah,
like we didn't start like the talking and dinner part of it until I was closer to high school.
Yeah. What else have you heard from other kids that they have said that they would love their parents to know? What would help with the communication?
So the other thing I'm seeing is, like, a lot of times once the trust is either gone or leaving in the relationship between the kids and the parents, a lot of times there's some nonverbal cues that it's like kind of the last ditch effort, like, please notice this because I've given up talking. And so some of these nonverbal cues can be like change in behavior, suddenly getting very depressive or overly aggressive, or just something very out of character for them.
School grades.
Yeah, suddenly
dropping
getting bad
out
grades,
of activities.
or like just making a very bad decision, just kind of going off the deep end in terms of behavior, or like shutting down, like staying in their room, avoiding eye contact, not coming out for meals.
That was one of the things that was like the clincher for your dad and I.
Yeah.
We noticed you both of the healthily attached children started refusing to invite people over, did not want us to be around you or your friends, did not want your brother around ever. You were hiding in your rooms more and more. And we were in counseling.
Right.
We were in family counseling. We were in every kind of counseling. And when we were sitting down to dinner and we would call you for dinner, and there were times where you would just refuse to come. And, there was so much chaos anyway. And I understood it because dinner time was one of the worst times.
Yes.
All the stuff would come out. You'd see all the manipulation, and you'd start to see her just shrinking in her chair, like, get me out of here. And there were times when I would think, I don't want to make her sit here through that. I can see what's happening. I mean, I don't like the gaslighting. I don't like the manipulating. I don't like the lying. I don't like the crazy that was going on in our house. And then I see it impacting you, and I didn't want to make you sit there and live through it either. And so then Dad and I are like, we can't even have dinner together. What are we going to do here? And at the time we were going through it, Facebook didn't exist. The internet,
or it was just starting.
Yeah, it was just starting.
Yeah.
I think
we didn't have one.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't even. We had a computer, but this was back in the dark ages.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know anybody who had been through this before. I didn't know one other family that we could call and say, what do we do? And in fact, the counselor that I was working with, who I believe saved my life and ultimately yours, she said, I said, do you have any other families who have been through this? And she said, none of them have made it. I don't have anybody that I can refer you to because nobody's like come out of it okay, either with their family intact or their marriage intact. Yeah. And that was super depressing. Yeah. But also she said, so I want you to pay attention to this because there's other people following after you, and I'm going to send them your way. So it's like, oh my goodness, that's
no pressure.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. But it's been amazing because the last part that I want to talk to is how can parents and families heal after something like this? And it doesn't mean that you have to have placed a child outside the home. Many of you may not have. Some of you may be considering whether that's treatment or a boarding school or another family or whatever it may be. But how do you heal with the children that you have a healthy attachment to, and they've suffered so deeply and you've suffered so deeply? How do you repair?
Well, for us, it's still an ongoing process, but it's been leaps and bounds better than it was, 11 years ago. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, and so Katie moved away, went to graduate school. She's married. She's been married for 5 years. So there have been seasons where we have not been as close, and we've fought hard.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, literally we fought hard, but also we have fought hard.
Never came to blows, but.
No, but we fought hard to recover.
Yeah.
And to heal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so it's been a long process, and, it's not like every day we're just constantly battling with each other. It's just like every now and then little things will come up and it'll be like, okay, we need to work on that.
It's like, yuck, there it is again.
Oh, darn, it's still there. But over the years, we've gotten pretty good at kind of identifying what it is that we need to work on, what it is we need to talk about, and how we talk about it. Because the big thing was discovering how to talk to each other about this sort of thing.
Yeah, so there's two issues. One is what the issue is, and one is how do you talk about the issue.
Right.
So...
Yeah, because we found out that a lot of the memories that we have, we remember differently from back when everything was going on to now. I have very different memories of what happened from what Mom remembers.
Well, and so I have some training as a crisis responder. I know a lot about trauma, and what I've discovered about trauma that most of you all know, so you're going, well, duh, is that you don't want to remember. Trauma kind of makes you forget. And so we have photo albums that I look at, and I'm in them. I'm in the pictures, and I don't have any recollection of that event. So then Katie will come to me and say, hey, remember this? That really hurt me when you did this or this or this. And I'm sitting there going, I didn't do that. Or I don't remember that. Mm-hmm. And that caused a lot of problems as we were first trying to recover.
Right, because we would butt heads, because it would be, this hurt me. Well, I didn't do that. Yes, you did. I don't remember that. Well, I do. So it was really tough at first because we weren't even remembering the same incident.
Right. So how do you reconcile something that one of you or both don't even have a memory of, or you remember it totally different? And right. I want to speak to parents here, because this is where my humbling came in, because I recognized if I don't remember clearly, either maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, but our perception of what happened needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. And her perception many times was that I left her, put her in charge, made her deal with something when I couldn't even deal with it. And even though that was never my intent, that was how it felt to her. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm going to fight her on that, we both lose.
Right.
And we lose relationship. And so there have been many times where even if I do not remember, I have to just go, you know what, that happened. That was how she remembers this. That's her perception. And I have to say, I'm so sorry mm-hmm. that happened. And what can I do to help repair that? And that has been one of the things I think that has made the biggest difference in our healing.
Yeah, because if the kid feels like they have been unheard and left out and just they don't have a way of expressing themselves for so long.
And really it's part of their trauma.
Right. Well, and then they come to the parent finally and say, this really hurt me. I need something different. And the parent goes, well, I don't remember that. It's like, that's it. Like you can't get back from that. And mm-hmm. and it took years of us doing this to realize, like, oh, that's not the way we need to be confronting each other right. and working with each other, because it's really working with each other to get to the healing place rather right. than confronting each other on it.
And I want to speak to parents again here, because I know what it feels like to be so, everything is dumped on you, because your brother did that a lot. Like everything was my fault. Everything was, and when he was triangulating with Dad and I, and Dad didn't see it, then I'm like feeling defensive all the time because everybody's piling on. So it feels like you can't even take one more thing. And I felt like I was taking on the burden of all the therapy and all of that. And I'm like, if there's one more thing, and I just had to swallow it mm-hmm. and go, okay, it is one more thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And so I'm going to do this because she's that important.
Well, especially since when all this was going on, I was still a teenager. Mm-hmm. So how is a teenager supposed to know how to engage in this type of conversation? Mm-hmm. I mean, now I'm not. Now I understand. So now we have really good conversations about this. But at the time, there was no way I would have known how to just, humble myself and say, maybe I'm thinking of this differently, and maybe my perception of things isn't correct.
Right. Well, and there was one time I remember recently where we were talking about a prior event, and we both remembered it differently. Mm-hmm. And I did humble myself and came to you and said, I'm so sorry. And like a week later, you came back and you said, you know what? I think you were right.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, wow. Okay, that never would have happened, though, if I had not been able to do that
right.
first.
I would have been stuck in my memory and been like, she was wrong, she was horrible to me, and therefore I'm going to be mad at her forever.
Well, and
which is not a great.
One time I did something that hurt you, and you texted me, and you told me, and I remember we were visiting you in grad school, and you said, it's not that big a deal, but this really hurt me. And in the past, I would just stuff it. And then I'd be mad at you the whole time you're here. And I don't want to do that. So I want you to know this hurt my feelings. Mm-hmm. And I was first of all, it was hard for me because I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, and I didn't even know I had done anything. And so Dad kind of talked me off the ledge before I responded. But I felt like I did a better job with that.
Yeah.
And then you did a great job. So we were both like, I said to you, I'm so proud of you for saying it.
Yeah.
Even in my response in your text, I'm like, thank you for telling me, and help me with this, because
Right.
I want to do it better. I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep stepping on you. I don't want to keep squashing you.
Right.
And so sometimes I have to listen to things that are hurtful because you need to have your voice.
Right.
So for me to encourage you to have your voice, I may have to hear things that are hard for me to hear.
Yeah.
But we're coming up to the end of our time here. We're actually just a little over. But I want to say one last thing here to parents and to your kids, is that there is hope.
Yeah.
I want you to see that it's hard, but you can have an amazing relationship with your kids. And it's also not over if you screwed it up.
Yeah.
There's hope, there's redemption, there's healing. So we want to offer that to you guys. And, we do coach together some. So if any of you are going, oh my gosh, I need this help, email me, carryotoole.com, and you can come and find us there. But we want to thank you all for joining us. Is there anything else you want to say before we're done?
No, that's it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're so appreciative, and take care of everyone in your family.
Yes.
God bless. Bye-bye.